we are live. Welcome, friends, to the Collector Series with me. I'm very excited to share. We have Joey Peapod. He's on. We're doing a late night show, but he's been kind enough to jump on with us and talk about so many things. I'm personally really excited about this episode because I get to pick his brain on everything Ken Griffey Jr. As everybody will probably know. Everybody knows at this point. That's my guy, and I PC him heavily, and I'm actually becoming more and more influenced by this man right next to me here. He's teaching me by the minute and by the day, and I'm learning so much about the Griffey collector base, but more importantly about cards, about grading, about comps. We're going to talk about comps. We're going to talk about grading. We're going to talk about all the discrepancies, kind of why numbers are usually lower. There's a lot of really interesting things I think we're going to gather from this episode that's going to help you understand why cards sell for less sometimes, and understand that not all 10s are 10s, and sometimes 10s are not 10s, if that makes sense. We'll talk about that. We'll also, I do want to talk about MBA, Mike Baker, because I feel like that's a whole nother thing too. Mike Baker, he grades the card, but he's like the grader. So without, muck it up any more of an intro here, Joey, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Great. So why don't we start with this? Because we start with this every single time. I think it would be fun to just learn about, how you got into cards. I mean, you're Rhode Island, correct?
I'm in Rhode Island. Yep,
Providence, Rhode Island. And you're a Mariner.
From Boston.
Originally from Boston?
No, we're an hour out from Boston.
Hour out from
Red
Boston.
Sox, Patriots, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're there. But you're a Mariner guy.
Yeah, Mariner, Griffey. I was never really a team fan. I was more of a player fan. Okay. Between Griffey and Peyton Manning, those were my two
Peyton
guys.
Manning.
So
yeah, cool. So what got you into the Mariners? What not just the Mariners? How'd you start in collecting? Like, how did you get into the whole thing?
I mean, the first thing I ever remember, I think my parents got me from like those Wish catalogs, like a set of 1990 Score. So that was probably like the first thing I got. And then my grandfather always bought me cards as well. So yeah. I just was always into it. And, 93 was probably the first year. Like, I remember when SP came out, I would have only been like 10. I remember like me and my buddy used to throw quarters against the fireplace to like win the cards. And then I remember like the Jeter at the time was like $22. And then for Christmas, his father got him like a bunch of cards. And he got him a box of 93 Flair, which as a kid, I'm like, oh, this is like super awesome. It's in a box. And then he gave me a pack out of it, and I hit the Mike Piazza Wave of the Future, and it booked for $15. But at the time, I thought that was like the hugest thing in the world. So
that's a big card back then, right? I mean, that's a lot of money back then.
That and 93 Tops, the black golds. I remember like the craze over those. Even commons were $15. The 93 Flair team lead, like the rack packs with the team leaders. So I used to go to like CVS once a day and just buy cards,
CVS. Yeah, I used to go to the gas station and get 89 Donruss. So I think we're probably around the same age. I'm 42. So I think I grew up as well with you with that whole junk wax era. So the cards that were really popular. I dropped out around 92, 93. I was pretty much done. I never got into the premium sets. 93 Finest doesn't resonate with me because I wasn't collecting at that time. But so you got into it. Did you ever leave, or is this something that you've just been doing this whole time and you've just?
No, I did it. So I'm 39. So I did it until I graduated high school in 01. So I quit in 01, and then I probably opened a couple boxes here and there, but like I had a Griffey collection. I still have the pictures of it. I keep it because sometimes people like ask about, like, my biggest card was like $50 at the time, but I had like a 4-row box of Griffey and I sold it off. I got like $2,000 for it. And then I quit until like probably 2010. And then around that time I was like, let me come back and I started buying wax. So it was 2000, whenever 2011 Bomb and Draft came out. That was like one of the first things I opened. Actually, no, 2011 Triple Threads is what got me back into it. I opened a box and I pulled a Ripken Triple Auto, which is like the case set. I'm like, oh, wow. And I went back into the store, bought another box. And it was just like a little magazine store. And they barely they barely sold cards, but they had them. So the next box I pulled, it was a Mantle relic. It was a booklet with Babe Ruth and like 5 other players, and it was a Grover Cleveland Alexander cut signature, which I thought was like $10 million, but it ended up being like $800. But that box got me rehooked, and then I just went out that year buying a ton of wax, and then quickly I kind of went into like I did a lot of grading with Beckett stuff back then, and but quickly I wanted to get back into Griffey, so I was like, I looked up in my Beckett. I'm like, hey, they're all $40. I'll just go buy everything. And then I quickly learned that Beckett was outdated because that was the Bible in the 90s.
Yeah.
And the cards that they say are $40 are really $400 or $500. My buddy Sean was the first person I reached out to. It was like, no, that's not how it works. The Beckett's useless. But I basically went through 4 iterations of collection. Like I quit for that decade. When I came back in 2010, I built up a decent collection of like up to mid high end stuff. So I ended up selling it all off. I ended up finding a bunch of stuff again, but like every time I came back, I focused on the higher end. And then basically 2018 is when I had sold everything off, and I'm like kind of got back into it with like a couple of trades. And I had a friend, John, who was into basketball, and I sold a lot of stuff on eBay, and like the basketball guys were like over the top with condition, and I didn't even really like graded cards that much. And every day he would, like, anytime I would sell a card, he would just like beat me up on like, what's the condition? How's the corner? I'm like, guy, it's numbered out of 30. Just be happy to find the card. And then I just switched to just grading everything. So I decided just to focus on PSA 10 stuff at that time, pretty much. And
why PSA 10? Why from Beckett to PSA 10?
Well, the writing was on the wall with like the price discrepancy, and then I quickly learned that PSA was. I knew there were a lot. Like at first, I used BGS because they were easier in my mind, because PSA's site was kind of confusing. But once you actually do it, it's not as bad. But I quickly learned PSA is a lot more. They're a lot stricter than BGS. So like
really,
the prices were double, right? And then I quickly learned why. So like, unfortunately, everybody that's learning now, they have to learn at $19 a card. I learned at $8 a card. So I was able to send what I did was, so when I graded with Beckett, I was like 24 for 24 with 3 BGS 10s, right? So I'm thinking I'm a good grader. Now, it took me a while to learn exactly what PSA, like the exact standards were, because nobody knew. Like I asked around, and so I bought like a 4-row box of Griffey Commons, all base cards. But the guy was just like, as he was getting them, he was putting them in sleeves. So I ended up sending in 220 Griffey base cards, and then like 300 other cards. Like I was going through 94 top sets, just like testing the leniency, and I ended up hitting 50% on the Griffey base, so I got 110 gems on those. And then it also taught me the registry set. That's also what drives PSA. Like you have like base tops card. Why does the score select $40, but the regular score is 200 or whatever, because you learn the different sets that people piece together for the complete run or whatever. So it basically taught me a lot. Like I sold a Tim Salmon 94 tops because it was a pop 2. Yeah, it was $110. That's a card you throw out. So with an eye you can turn nothing into something.
And so you basically use that knowledge and that experience. So you grew it. You went through it trial and error, and you learned how to do it. And then you took that and you that catapulted your collection. Did that actually help you build the Griffey collection you have now? Right? You just kind of you said there's how many iterations you've had. That was the first iteration. So the second iterations, you get back in 2010. You're like, okay, Beckett's irrelevant. Grading's a thing. BGS was easier, but now PSA is stricter. And so
no, this was the 4th iteration. It was kind of like 2 in the middle of. The second one was when I came back in 2010. The third was I I ended up like focusing on like that just high end stuff, but then I ended up selling it off because I got a new place. And in my mind, I was done with cards, which, you know, we all make stupid mistakes, but luckily I was able to reacquire everything I sold off, but even better condition. So no harm, no
Wow.
foul.
No harm, no foul.
And one thing I always like to say is like I knew where the bodies were buried. Like I actually sold a lot of PSA 10s. So I basically reached out to people that I knew had PSA 10s that didn't care for them. I would make sure I had like the raw copy and make a deal with them. You know, I made a lot of deals like that.
So okay, look, I want to hear that. Let me back up. You're going to drop a lot of really awesome stuff. So for all those that are listening now, you're now witnessing Joey Peapod right now for the first time. I've rewatched his episodes a few times. A huge fan of his journey and how he views everything. When you make deals, because that's the one thing when people don't want to let go of a card, you kind of need to come with an offering that's going to give them the incentive to give you that card. Because a lot of the cards that you want, a lot of the cards as a hardcore collector, as you grow into becoming hardcore, which I feel like I'm turning into, those aren't cards you see ever. You have to find the person who has them and convince them to sell it to you. And your strategy is to do that, a raw card of the card you're trying to purchase from that person.
That it was in the past, correct. To get where I am now, I probably graded about 40% of my collection myself, including like most of the finest refractors. But I quickly learned that it wasn't feasible. Like it's like the 90s is tough for a reason. You could open case after case and it's just going to be dud. So some of the stuff you have to buy. Like probably the first card that I really did that was a 97 finest embossed refractor, the gold. One came up on PWCC and I went through like literally 5 raws. I cracked Beckett BGS 9.5s and I kept striking out. And then I quickly learned like the card that really trained me with PSA versus Beckett was there was a 97 Kobe, the 96 refractor.
Mm-hmm.
It had a refractor line and nobody could give me a straight answer if you could still get a 10 with a refractor line. This was in 2018, mind you. Now, some people now that it's still don't understand this, but back then, if you see older labels, they have refractor lines. So they switched to standard. I just don't know what year they did. Maybe 2015, 2016, because I didn't grade heavily with PSA. So like right now, you can't get a 10 with a refractor line. I won't say you can't because things sneak by. They're human. All companies make errors. But if you have a refractor line, it's not going to get a 10. That's the standard.
The refractor lines, 2000, potentially, you don't know when, but potentially 2018, 1996 Kobe Topps Chrome refractors, pre-2018-ish time frame, fractor lines were still getting 10s.
Refractor lines are still getting 10s. Yeah, I've if you look at like if you look at 93 finest Griffey, there's probably some images online. You can see refractor lines. There was a 95 finest refractor we were talking about. One sold on Heritage with the peel. I didn't buy it because it had a refractor line. I could tell. And then like the Kobe, mine had a refractor line. I kept getting a 9. So after I subbed it like 3 times at $200 a piece, I'm like, all right, I'm going to assume this card is perfect. Otherwise, you can't get a 10, with the refractor line. Now, when I say you can't get, that doesn't mean like the standard is it shouldn't happen. Does it mean that one person might overlook one? It can happen. That's a whole nother conversation. But as the standard stands, if it has a refractor line, it won't gem.
It won't gem with refractor lines. Everybody's hip to that now. The grading companies are hip to that, at least PSA. And why? Again, PSA to you is just you think the market difference, the delta between BGS or SGC and PSA is because they do grade stricter and the serious investor recognizes that and they will pay more for that?
I think I couldn't give you I'll tell you my personal take.
Your take on it, yeah.
My personal, I'm OCD, right? I grade, and I could show this to anybody. It's something you can show somebody. Like a Beckett card, gem to gem, 9.5 to PSA 10. To me, a BGS 10 is like, it shouldn't even exist. It's a gimmick. Very few are actually pristine, especially I had a BGS 10 that wouldn't even have been a PSA 9. But to me, a gem to a gem, I would, and I'm sure the data backs it up and you could spin it either way, but I would say the PSA 10 is the better card 9 out of 10 times. Like
The
if
PSA
you
10,
break
9
it,
out of 10
it
times.
yeah.
Wow. That's a hot take. I don't think it's a hot take. I just think it's an opinion, obviously, but it's an opinion from someone who's graded a lot of cards
I grade every day.
themselves.
I basically could say you could say I grade for a living, you
Wow.
know. And then the thing is though is there's some people that maybe don't scrutinize the cards as closely, so they don't know what they're looking at, or they think because something similar, you know, for instance, like on you know, refractors like these, right?
hmm
The biggest issue on these is the back corners, but you can't tell unless you have a loop. So unless you have a loop, you're not seeing the little tiny, you know, mark coming up on the end. So I think it's just a matter of people not really knowing what they need to look for to understand why they got the 9 or the 10. Do you know what I'm saying?
Got it. And so you'll grade that card. Was that, now what do you think that card is? The one you just showed us, that 94 finest, that's the
Yeah,
refractor, right? That
yeah.
94 Griffey refractor, is that a 9 or a 10 in your opinion?
Oh,
Based on
that's a
what you've
9.
seen.
Actually, it might be a 10. It's close because the centering's decent. So, because I got like I have stacks on stacks. Like right here. This is just 93 base cards. So I separated all the better players, and so these are all ones I have to go through and review. I just haven't had the time. I have piles of cards all over the place,
Wow,
and
that's incredible. That's incredible.
but
So okay, and then folks that are watching this now, this is what Joey does for a living. This is his
is
job.
anybody actually watching this?
No, it's not alive.
Oh, it's not a.
It's not alive. It's going to be it's pre-recorded.
Oh,
It
okay,
will be
okay.
launched later. But I like saying
I
that because as
gotcha.
you're listening to it, it kind of feels like it's alive. No, it's
Yeah,
I just want that to be that needs to be shared, and that's sort of like a disclaimer that needs to be out there because this is what you do for a living. So there's a reason why I trust this guy a lot.
yeah.
He knows what he's talking about, and if you're going to spend some money on some of these cards, you're going to want to know that stuff. So it's, PSA's got the premium for obvious reasons, and you're obviously not the only one who thinks that because there's a market premium for that,
Right.
and because of
I'll
that, go ahead.
moment. I'll break down the three major competitors how I see it. If I had to
Okay,
like
go ahead.
overly simplify it, and I do actually want to state one thing first: is PSA in their magazine, they state grading is subjective. You're paying for an opinion, right? So that's the first thing. You're not paying for a fact. You're paying for an opinion. And sorry, I should have turned my phone off. I'm getting like text, but
Can't hear it.
yeah. So you're paying for an opinion, and I lost my train of thought.
You're going to break down each one of the different.
Yeah. Okay. So it's subjective. So two people can see the same card differently. Like in my personal orders, they've been very consistent for the volume they do. And mind you, they're doing 10x other people. So, to break that down, you have an office supply store out there, Staples or
Yeah.
whatever. I used to manage 6 people in one. This is like 15 years ago. I couldn't even get 6 people to do the same thing correctly. So now you have hundreds of graders. You want to see a subjective thing the same way. To me, that they do a fairly good job. But so PSA to me is technical, where they're using the loop magnification. BGS is, middle of the road, kind of eyeing it, but like the grades they assign the subgrades don't make sense half the time. Like they don't. It's kind of like, for instance, a 9 surface on a BGS card could range from a fingerprint to looking like it's been dragged across the floor after you crack it. And I have some personal ones that I sub that I could, show that, that about. And then SGC to me is just eyeing it. They just kind of eye it. And there was even a podcast with Dr. James Beckett where the guy that used to run SGC told his graders not to use a loop on the corners of vintage cards because it was too fine. So there's a reason that, and then, if you went out there, everybody could make a negative case against any company. I could pick apart PSA all day, and I'm a PSA fan. They're not perfect. They destroyed one of my best cards, they still owe me $3,500 that I didn't get yet. And But overall, like from a like a let me see if I have any right here. Just like, I have a whole stack of 10s right here. I personally won't keep a card that I don't think is a 10. It's just like the OCD in me, where if it's not, I don't want the number. I want to look at the card and say, hey, I know this is a 10, and
Is that those cards you sold to me?
yeah, no.
The ones that you sold to me.
Actually,
I don't think they're tens.
the silver embossed I sold to you was actually one I'm like, oh, it's really clean. Do I really want to move this right now? Because it was like perfectly centered, and there was no greening. It's really,
you had to think about it, brother. I appreciate you looking out for me there and helping out another Griffey guy. But that's interesting though, because you're bringing up a topic that I think people talked about in the past. It's not a secret, not all 10s are the same, right? So let me ask you a question. Since we're talking about the grading, well, I'll dive more into that. You've kind of broken down SGC, BGS, and PSA and how you feel they grade. You're someone that does this lightly, but you're someone who does this a lot. So you got some skin in the game. You understand it. You're not some guy like me talking about it. Clearly doesn't have that experience that you have. But let's talk about Mike Baker. Do you feel like that's a gimmicky thing? Do you feel like that actually?
Okay. I mean, I don't want to go around talking shit on all these companies, but like if you're gonna, like, the first card I saw of his was the Jeter I sold. It was a 96 Marigold, and I had a refractor line, and he gave it a gold.
Oh, really?
Like, there shouldn't even have been a 10. It was in an SGC 10 case, right? And then he put the gold on top of it. So, like, did you even look at the card?
Interesting.
Like, you graded for PSA, you would, I don't know what you would give it, but I mean, I do, all 10s aren't the same, but, I don't know that his service adds any value. So maybe like when I get the cards with his stickers, I take them right off, personally. So
that's a lot. Okay, cool. Well, no, I just curious because you have this, you really are rooted in what you believe and think, and you've gotten there through experience, and you've done this for a while, and that's how you've arrived at your conclusion. So I respect that, because you're not just a guy who just got back into the hobby, and within the 3 years feels if you've accumulated this opinion. You've done this for a long time, and now you're like, okay, I've got enough experience to make this, to have an opinion and feel like confident in it. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is comps. We were talking about comps before we pressed record, and you had some interesting things to say about that. You had an episode with your buddy Rodney I listened to back. If you guys haven't seen, he's got like only 4, so it won't take you long. Go check out. You're gonna see it. You see his name on there, Joey Peapod _Peapod. Go find him on Insta or on YouTube and listen to, they talk about Griffey a lot. So if you're a Griffey guy, you're gonna love it. But there is still some good stuff in there you can pull out that applies to the whole hobby altogether. But you talked about comps and how comps, you can't trust comps all the time. I know on Luca Tiger Braun, Luca Nation, I know Andrew and Cage will, from time to time talk about comps at shows. Black Jaded Wolf, she has a really good show. Sharon, they talk about comps at shows, what it's like at shows, how you go in there and how you negotiate. Talk to me about and unpack this whole conversation on comps today, before 2020 and now up to this point. How has it changed in your opinion?
I would also like a sidebar is that to me, every like the Griffey world, 90s collectors, new stuff, it's all different worlds in my opinion. So when I speak of like certain things, I would say it mostly applies to the 90s Griffey, early 2000s market, where it might not apply to Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, before and after, I mean, everything shot up. To me, it comes down to studying. Like, I know the 90s cold. So you show me almost any card, I'll know what it is, rough value. Where you show me, some LeBron or Kobe, I have no clue. I have to like, just like kind of you are now with me, you have to like kind of, research it. But that takes a while to get up. So you can't just expect to go look at completed sales and get the whole picture of, for instance, Griffey. Most of his big stuff doesn't sell on the open market. guys like me over the past few years, me, Rodney, my buddy Rick, like we've let big things go that just don't come up. They're just locked away. And like the 90s market has it. Like if you check my eBay, I only usually sell 90s stuff because of the market. I know it's not going to get returned. There's going to be very little games with the stuff. People actually want to collect it. They actually want the card. They don't want to just flip it in 3 months or, whatever. And then also with the comps is, obviously like the time of the day, the time of the year, like to me, tax time is the best time. But like this month isn't always the best, but I had to sell some stuff. So the stuff went lower. Then I bet somebody could probably list some of the stuff I just sold next month and probably make double on some of the stuff, So I think people should, look at researching, when it sold, title, obviously. And then like at shows, it's just, I personally don't like setting up at shows anymore. It's like, I find it very tedious because everybody wants to be the comp police. Like that's all you hear is the word comp. But there's a lot that, like you told me before, stuff that goes unsold that still shows up. Or if somebody's new and doesn't understand, like for instance, Probstein, like 90% of his stuff gets relisted 2-3 times. So it's like, if you don't know that market, you don't know really what it's supposed to sell for,
Non-payers, the non-payers,
right.
you deal with it on eBay, and then it still shows up as a comp, as a sold, but they don't know that this person didn't sell. I mean, it could be you're waiting for them to pay 4 days and they don't pay, but then that comp is still a comp someone might use to go purchase a card, but it's
Right.
not truly the value of the card. And you also talked about the different auctions. There's lots of different auction sites. You got Leland, you got Heritage, you've got PWCC, Golden, eBay.
Heritage.
And you made a very interesting comment. Tell me about why that doesn't necessarily help.
To me, in my opinion, I used to be like, ask anybody that knows me. I loved auctions. I just wanted to auction everything, and I still do, because I'm not one of those people that gets hung up on like needing every dollar out of every card. It's the overall that matters. So if I need money, I know when I sell stuff, I could tell you if I'm going to lose before I sell it. But to me, all these auction sites have watered down the market, because now you have it's a full-time job just to literally check all these sites. Like me, I used to check a ton. Now I just check PWCC and eBay is like my main two. But then you got Golden, then you got the PWCC Premier, which sometimes I forget to check. PWCC listed now. PSA has a whatever with Golden. What is that? Like their own vault. So now they're listing stuff. You got the Derek Jeter one. I don't even know what's that one called.
Arena something.
Arena. Yeah. It's just endless amounts of stuff. Nobody can physically keep up with all that. I forgot what site it was, but it was a few months back. Could have been more than a few months. But 98 rubies Derek Jeter sold for 10 grand. It's like a $20,000 card. But whoever sent it to that third-rate auction site is also to blame too for thinking that's going to do well. But I think unless you have like something super hot, the money comes a lot slower. And I think now is like networking is more important than ever. Having a network of people that want something. I've noticed that like this stuff I just sold on my last auction, I probably was off by 10 to 12 grand, just because I auctioned it rather than privately selling it,
Wow. Yeah, I'm feeling that right now. Like I'm obviously selling most of my stuff to get the big Griffies, and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm taking losses left and right. I mean, it'll all aggregate out, but I should have money to spare to go buy more.
Right.
I feel like, but then, then there's the market. The market's calmed down, and we're looking potentially heading into recession. Is it
right
2020? I mean, I didn't buy anything at real highs either. I mean, I think I got stuff at, in the last couple of years. I didn't buy stuff in early to 2021, because that's when everything was bonkers. But so I guess, what do you say to a person like me, or who's jumping in and trying to build a collection of, legitimate cards, now that the prices are so, they've grown and they've matured so much? I mean, you feel confident in Griffey's market. I think a lot of the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James player collectors probably feel pretty confident in those markets and everything. I mean, we can go through a list of the top players and the top people to PC that feel like they would, be great stores of value over time. But how do you navigate that now? Because it feels like you got to literally sell or come up or raise capital to just buy one really good card. And some of these cards used to not be that expensive. And are we going to get, hurt later spending some of this money on some of these cards? Kind of asking for me. I'm kind of asking for probably a lot of people thinking about that right now that want to buy some of these cards.
I mean, if you want high-end stuff, I'm just be straight up. Anybody that's just starting out, you kind of F. But you have to put a lot of legwork in. Like, I flipped my way up to where I'm at. There's no way I could afford my collection just straight up outgunning everybody on eBay. I literally couldn't have done it,
Makes sense.
So it's kind of learning hobby knowledge and then using that hobby knowledge to find stuff to flip, or try to find collections, or learn grading, or if you're rich, and then you can just buy whatever. But to me, I think you have to use the hobby knowledge, because everybody's got some, whether they know it or not. And they might even be into have business skills, but flip it, just eBay alone. Searching all day, you can find endless amounts of stuff to resell. Now, today's market is more tight. It's tighter than ever. People are stealing your steals, and last year alone, I had 12 items I didn't get that I stole that people went behind me and took. So it is a lot tighter market. Especially even me with me giving out knowledge. So many more people grade. And they're now buying up more stuff that I normally would have bought, but now,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it's tough if you're brand new to come in, but it can be done. I think you just need to hone the eye, is what I would say. Hone your eye. When I don't ask people very rarely any questions about condition, I just look at it and take a very educated guess. Now, obviously, depending on the value, I might ask, hey, is there any indents or something? But overall, I can tell fairly certain roughly how the card's going to be online. And then if I don't like it, I just don't buy it, And to another thing of your point would be maybe get 2 or 3 mentors. So you wanted to pick the best card, so you ask a couple people if they have the same answer. Maybe you go with that card.
Yeah, because there's just so many. I mean, with the 90s, with modern, even more so. 90s is a little easier. Well, I don't know if it's a little easier. I think there's equally modern and 90s. Like you said, they're different spaces. They're different little pockets of communities.
Right.
But it's still hard to figure out, okay, because I found you can go on for Griffey cards, and I'll just use Griffey, but you can use any athlete. There's a lot of really cool cards in the 90s of lots of different great athletes. And some of them look just amazing. Like, why is this not expensive? Why is this not? And some of it's even numbered, serial numbered. It checks all the boxes, but it's still worth $500. And I'm not saying $500 is chump change. Some folks that could be a good step, but it's still not one of those cards. And you're trying to figure out why. And that's why you look at some of these, well, this seems way cooler, but case in point, the Intimidator 96 and the 95 just base refractor. PSA 10, PSA 10, you're all day 95 refractors. There's only 14 of them. That thing's going to go. That's more of a solid. But the gold is first gold. There's all these cool things you could talk about. It looks cool, but there's 46 of them in 10, and you're well, no, the 95 easily, and it's more expensive. It's almost double the price. But you wouldn't know that unless you ask someone like you or someone in that community that understands why that would be worth more.
A quick story on the 96 golds is when they first came out, Topps came out and said that there was only 150 of them. And then a collector came out, I believe it was Greg Maddox. and he ended up getting like 200 of them, and he sued Topps. And it ended up being there was way more. My numbers might be slightly off, but it's generally in that area.
More than 150.
It was more than 150. And then he sued Topps, and then more people came out with that they had a ton of them. So like basically the numbers were fake, and there is a lot of them out there, and who knows how many is the total number. So that kind of killed it for a while, because when those came out, the Griffey was like $2,000 in Beckett. And then only recently, over the past couple of years, did it start to come back, because that was like $80 for a while,
Wow.
So it came back $80, just like 98 PMGs. I had 4 or 5 of them over the years, and the problem is I always traded up, so I could never like hoard stuff, and I gambled, and my job was like, I was into other stuff. It wasn't just, if I had some of the hoarder mentality some of these guys had, I would be a billionaire, but to each their own.
Right. You would have kept them. Yeah.
But like, even as a few years back, $1,200 was considered crazy. Now it just hit $66,000. So it's certain sets just have the allure. But to be fair, me and a few other people, we always knew like we knew it would get to that level. We just don't know when.
Right.
So
you knew back in the day, the PMGs, like, do you remember them when you were collecting in your first phase?
No, I never even seen a PMG until probably 2010.
And what were they going for at that time? Like even the Jordans and all that stuff. I mean, do you remember?
The Griffies were like $800.
Wow.
Because I sold one, 2 of them actually.
It's just crazy to think that now.
Same thing with the 96 credentials. No, not 96 credentials. The 98 credentials. I had 2 of them, and 2 PSA 9s, and I ended up selling them. What did I sell them for? I think I got $1,200 each, and then like a week later, one came back up for auction, and it did like $6,000 or something ridiculous, and then now they're $20,000 for a 9.
So you're so confident, and you've mentioned this in some of your podcasts. You're so confident in Griffey's market on those upper tier, middle to upper tier cards that they almost act like your 401k. Am I wrong?
Correct.
You feel like that appreciation is going to be just as lucrative as parking your money in a Roth IRA, or you're not.
I think it's going to be more for me. And again, I'm also, if we had to put like a disclaimer, I'm a very heavy risk taker. Like I don't, like, I guess I use the words, I just don't care. Like I play blackjack, weekly, so that helps fund some of it. But over the past couple years, like the amount of growth in Griffey is crazy. But like if you have the blue chip cards, you can also borrow against them. There's companies that will let you do that. Even like traditional banks, if you have it where it's appraised, you can use it as collateral. But that's where the grading comes in. That's where having prime examples come in, stuff that's documented. It's not for everybody. And could the market collapse? But if Griffey's market collapsed, that means the entire market collapsed. So then I wouldn't feel as bad.
So you feel like, okay, so tell me, who do you feel like are the top 5 across all sports where the markets are, it pretty much holds up the card market? Who holds up the card market in your opinion? Athletes, cards.
That's tough because I don't follow half the sports. So, like I know soccer's big, and I've never will. I wouldn't even purchase a box for fun. So, but Griffey holds up the 90s baseball market. There's other players that some of the years, like Jeter, for instance, 97 to 99, super soft. But his 96 stuff is fairly big. Like his 96 Marigold would be probably one of the biggest 90s cards, but his other stuff just isn't there, But Jordan, for sure. I remember when I came back, somebody was talking about a green PMG. I think they pulled it. It was on blowout, and he sold it for like $60,000, at the time.
Wow.
Or 60 or 80 grand. And,
wow.
Now it's over $1 million. So
yeah, hang on. Yeah.
because I think we like, I don't know if we just mentioned it in this, but like the Griffey stuff, is it's kind of a small, like there's a lot of people, but all the big stuff is within like 5 people. Like all the one-on-one stuff you never even knew existed, one guy has like 90% of that. And then,
Do you know who that guy is?
yes,
Who?
I'm not saying.
Oh,
I
okay.
won't. I don't like to talk about
But
people
okay, so
unless
that's fine.
they
That's very fair. That's
want
very fair.
to, want
Privacy.
me
That
to.
yeah.
Yeah.
We want to respect people's privacy. But that there's
Right.
somebody that has a majority of this stuff. And this is Griffey, or is this like majority? It's everything.
I mean, this particular guy's literally got everything. But there's
Wow.
also other people that I know have like, you know, certain Griffies they got multiples of, or there's also collectors like, Marco on Instagram. He's been around since day one. He collected. So in 04 to 09, no, wait, 06 to 09, when Griffey kind of really, really, really sucked. And then he just got comeback player of the year. His stuff was like dirt cheap. Like a 97 Mirror Team, which is like a $65,000 card. It sold for $100. His Red Crusade was like 80 to
Jeez.
$200. So like if you collected during that era and you were a true collector, you just kept the stuff, didn't even think about selling it, and you bought most of your stuff in that era, you killed it because it was
Oh yeah.
literally pennies on the dollar.
So
Um,
how is Griffey's market and some of the baseball stuff? How does that? Because it's like, so 2020 happens. Were you surprised by that? Being
I
in it
was
since
that first, yeah,
2010?
yeah, I was surprised. I would sum up 2020 like this though. Like obviously you had the rise, um, but like it makes sense that the base cards blew up because it's all new people that don't know better. So it's being fluffed up by influencers and whoever else, and you just want to make money. I wanted to make money. I bought into FOMO. I bought some top. What is it? The art ones.
Oh, Project
2020.
2020.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yes,
part.
we all
I had
did.
some. I had some Keys Shores. I bit
Yeah.
the. You know, I had a whole box of that shit, and but it makes sense because there's a learning curve to it's like a hobby. If you want to do it right, you have to learn. You're not just going to come in and buy up everything. Some of the stuff just can't be found, and I think it's the same. It's the same thing. You just got to put the effort in to learn it and really understand. Like that's why we did that tier video to
Mhm.
break down the tiers where why are these two cards where a credentials is numbered to 91 and it's 20 grand, but this other one's numbered to 90 and it's $75. Like the average person wouldn't understand that because it's
They
both
don't
numbered the
know.
same.
Yeah,
Right.
it's confusing.
Yeah.
You don't know why. It just brings someone in that doesn't understand cards, and they're going to go, Why is that worth that much money in the first place? Why would anyone spend more than you can spend on a brand new vehicle on that? And then the other person go, well, this one's numbered the same. It looks really cool. Why isn't that expensive? I mean, they're I don't think they're, those are good questions. And I think for people that are coming into the hobby, those are questions that are warranted. And when you see the money that's being spent, I mean,
Right.
some cards just look cool. They're rare, and it's all supply and demand. People want them, so you probably feel sort of confident as well because there's people that are just hanging on to these things and they're not getting rid of them. So the demand's going to be there. It's going to be kept up because these people are not going to sell them,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, like I said, like most of the stuff I have, literally, like I've only seen a few of them. So like a night, like um, Paul Corner taking quickly on Instagram. He's been wanting to buy a 99 EX now. And he's like, oh, I've been searching forever. I'm like, you only been looking for like a year. I'm like, that card, only 3 of them have come up ever, or whatever, 3 or 4 of them. So it's like, don't feel bad that you can't find it because it's impossible to be found. And actually on our podcast, one of the things Rodney always says is, buy now or pay more later. Once you learn the hierarchy of cards, if you see something within reason, you just got to buy it because more than likely is not going to be around, especially if you've never seen it, and it's low numbered. Just grab it. Don't worry. Like I had to, learn my lesson the hard way with that with a few cards, but like the 99 credentials was like one of the last ones where It came up at 3 a.m. and I offered it. And the next morning, I saw the follower count going up, and people started texting me about it. So eventually, like 11 a.m., I just hit buy it now. Hour later, a buddy messages me. He's like, "Did you just get that?" He's like, "Oh, you're lucky it's you, because I was gonna offer behind it." So it's like, thank God I did buy it. And then anything that's come up that I'm like, I know I won't see this again.
You just get it.
I just get it.
Right. No, I totally understand that. Sometimes you just got to make the call because and you can look and do your research too and see how often it's sold. I mean, at least publicly. You just don't know the private stuff, right? You don't know how often those things are being privately exchanged. That's the confusing part. But once you get to know the cards and what are important, I mean, gosh, I've been talking to you for just a few weeks and I've learned a ton. It literally transformed my whole collecting completely.
That's a whole layer to the game too. Is like, I personally don't want things to be public knowledge, because there's cards that are worth 60 grand people think are only worth $600. So that's how you can get an advantage. Learn those type of cards.
True.
And because it was, I don't know if it was Card Ladder, they were talking about that, or somebody was like, oh, private sales, like there should be more, like private deals should be made public. And it's like, I personally don't think so. Unless, if the people really, really, really want to, but overall, like, what's the point besides bragging? Like, not everybody needs to know everything. Like, it's also a game to me. Like, it's the thrill of the hunt. You go out there, you want to find a collection with some gems in it. Sometimes, you put enough time and energy in it. Like, to me, if you get a steal on eBay, this is a hot take. If you get a steal on eBay and you backdoor, if you backdoor somebody, I think you're an asshole. It's like honor among thieves. Like, if I get a Michael Jordan PMG right now for $500, I was the one that put the effort in to go search for it and find it or get it at that time. Do you know what I'm saying? If you go backdoor me, and more than likely, don't say, oh, well, it's only $500, because that other person probably only offered $700 and was able to make the deal happen behind the closed doors. So,
ethics in the hobby can sometimes be in short supply.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think when you get a lot more people coming in, I mean, do you feel like it's okay? So tell me this. This is always the classic question. Okay, 2020 came, 2021, at least the second quarter of 2021 was insane. Like, people were going crazy. Everything was too expensive. There's a lot of people out there that were calling that. I'll give a shout out. I remember listening to the Chris and Josh on the crossover, the Card Ladder guys, and they recognized it. Of course, they've been in it for a minute, so they recognized it. I'm sure you recognized it. People that have been doing it for a while understood it, had some fun with it, but understood it, and they were calling it out. And a lot of people didn't like hearing that, but they were right. And I always try to take heed of the advice of people that have been here. Hence the point I talk to you and I make decisions based on some of this great advice you're giving me, because you know what you're doing. You're going to trust someone to operate on your heart that's only been doing it for a couple of years, or you're going to trust the person who's been doing it for 30. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd rather trust the person who's been doing it for 30 years. That's where I'm going to lay my trust. And you don't want to make mistakes at this end of the game. So where do you think things are now? Where are they going? In your opinion,
I think it kind of like cleared the board, because again, with 2020, with all the newbies, they just saw endless money. They didn't see that, like, for instance, 2018 Topps Chrome update. To me, that was the set that kicked off like a new era of, like, I literally bought 30 count lots off of eBay. I got tired of even looking at them. I would just wipe them with a microfiber. I would get 33 out of 33 gems. Like, the print quality on that set was just insane. I remember getting an order back because it was backed up for a bit, and it was like 150 cards, 148 gems. You know what I'm saying? And there was half of them I didn't even look at. So, when you get a base card with a pop, 17,000, there's only so many people to, it's supply and demand, but at the same time, it's a base card. Like, it's not, same thing with like a Jordan rookie. Anybody that paid 700,000 for one, in my opinion, is an idiot, because it's a pop. The thing is basketball guys look at the pops differently than baseball guys. I consider anything over like 10 high, and in basketball they think like 100 is low. So, bigger market, maybe that's it. But
Why do you
matter of
is that
perspective.
is a matter of, so why do you think pop 10 in baseball is over pop 10 and over 10 in pop in baseball is high? Because a smaller demographic of people collecting?
I guess you could say that, or it just comes up more often, or um, I don't know. When I look at a pop report for the '90s stuff, and it's over 10, I just kind of culled my collection because I was just kind of thinning out. I had too much stuff. None of the marquee stuff, but like the other stuff. If it was like anything that I can rebuy, I sold.
Yeah.
Use the cash for something else. Like I just sold a '97 hot gloves, and it's like I love the card, but it's a pop 18. I know I can get one whenever. It's just a matter of money. That's kind of how I operate on my collection. If I know I can't buy it, it's not going anywhere. But if I know it's just a matter of finding one, or I know where one is, then I don't mind moving it.
Those are the type of conversations, Joey, I believe are being had now. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts anymore. I listen,
Yeah.
obviously, to the group I'm involved with Luca Tiger, LeBron, and I've listened to your episodes, a couple times, and there's just crossover guys are fun, and slapstock guys are good too. But I will say this: a lot of the conversations now are, how liquid are these cards that you have, and people are trying to move into better cards because they want to start, those that are still in this is, I'm not doing this for flipping. I lose money all the time with this. I don't even know how anyway, I sell to buy, and I'm selling everything to buy these cards. And when I'm selling them, I'm like, I never thought I'd sell this card, but you know what? There's like 5 for sale right now. If I can go on eBay and find a card, I'm learning that. I'm learning, well, that card's liquid.
Right.
Oh, it's a pop 300. It doesn't matter. There's like 7 for sale. That means 7 people don't really care enough to keep it. So that means I can probably always go back and get it. The cards, like the stand and deliver card, I'm throwing names out of cards that Griffey people would understand. Maybe not even a lot of Griffey people would understand that card because I didn't even know it existed before I met you. But that's a card. There's 1/9. I have it now, and thanks to you. And until I decide to sell it, that's the only 9. And theoretically, I mean, it's a pretty good chance there's 25 of them, and based on the condition and all that stuff. But just thoughts like that, like, okay, is this card ever going to come up? Well, I have it. It's locked away in my, and you know where it's at. Like you say, I know where the bodies are buried. You know where it's at, and you probably know a lot of people. Expand your network, learn where people, who has the cards and all that kind of stuff. But that's a truly rare card because you're never going to go find it. Versus even some of these cards that aren't rare, but they're popping up on auctions constantly. Well, I'll have a chance next week. I'll have a chance next month. Anyway, it's a very interesting topic, and people are exploring it now. What are we really trying to do? Like me, I'm trying to get cards that no one else has that look really cool to me because I love refractors. I love atomic refractors. I love gold refractors. So, all my stuff could be that. I love super refractors. Like I should sell my Mike Trout super refractor, but I just love it. And I feel like even with that card, it's Mike Trout. I've been going through this thought. It's a Mike Trout. He's a good guy. I've whittled I had like 7 of those suckers. Now I have 3. Just to buy all these Griffies. I've had to sell them, but I can always go back and get a lot of those. I can't probably get that superfractor because it's an auto. It's a 1 of 1. Yeah, he's got a handful of superfractors, but he has a minute amount that are autographed superfractors. So that it just kind of starts, okay, but what if some super fan gets it? I'm never selling this ever again. I'll never get that back until they decide to sell it. It's that mindset that people are starting to sort of go, okay, wait a second. I wonder what that's going to do to the market, though, once people really start becoming hip to that.
Right. And I think 90s will grow for this fact. Like, take Mike Trout. What cards of his that aren't his rookies are considered his standout top 5? Is there a consensus? Do you know what I'm saying? That,
No.
Like, take Topps Tribute or what any one of those brands, Sterling, or they're all the same year after year after year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
They all look the same with like a minor twist to the design with the same exact like 3 or 4 whatever it is, like nothing like even with Griffey. Let's see if I have one right here. Like I only picked up a few of his newer cards because I like what is it, this one, the mosaic, but at the same time it's just literally the 45 versions of one card. Like it's not like in the future, is that going to be a standout because it's 2022 Mosaic? Probably not. But people are going to know what his 97 Golden Boss refractor is because it's beautiful in hand, and his 90s inserts have different textures, die cuts, foils. Like you can see the difference and they stand out. Um, but like the new stuff to me just doesn't have the same appeal. Like what makes it any different? And then
Well,
all
they
the
talk
stuff
about
I like,
they
yeah,
talk about one of ones. How many one of ones are there in any set? There might be a
right.
handful of one of ones in the same set of a player. So then it kind of waters down the whole idea of what a one of one is.
Because I think the newer generation of collector, and obviously this has been since the early 2000s, is if it doesn't have an auto and a patch on it, they think it sucks. So a lot of people don't understand 90s inserts. Me personally, I hate autographs. I think it ruins the card. Like it doesn't need to have a patch and an autograph to be cool. In my opinion. No, some patch cards are nice, but I prefer I'd take Topps Chrome over, a patch auto or whatever.
I'm in both camps. I think it's
Yeah,
appropriate where it's appropriate. Like the trout
right.
cards I have,
If it's
I have
designed nice, but not just to throw it on and slap an auto
right.
just to say it's autoed.
I'm a Topps Finest fanatic. I think Topps Finest is the best product ever made, and all throughout the sports. I think they're all amazing, and some of my best cards are Topps Finest cards. But like the Trout one I have, like the one I have two left. I have the Bowman Chrome Auto 9510, and I have just base, and then I have and I got it at a very low price. I bought them at the bottom, so I think I'll be okay there. But I have the Finest Refractor 9 Auto, and it's his only on-card auto, and it's Finest, and it's just a beautiful card. Just the card's beautiful, and they built the card to have the autograph. So I don't mind stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know about cards getting autographed after the fact. Like I think it would be sacrilegious to take like a 97 embossed silver and have an autograph put on it. I think that
I
would
would
just be,
throw up if I saw that.
I would I don't know how I'd feel like. Now we're starting to geek. Now we're going to start geeking on this, but it's okay. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's my show here. So
hey, you know what? It's like collecting as a whole. You can collect whatever you want. Everybody's got an opinion and the way they want to collect and what they're gonna do, and it's teach their own.
So what do you think happens now moving forward? You see, everything's got thinned out, right? You say, okay, well, maybe we're talking about thinking about what liquidity really means, what cards are really rare. What happens as we move forward? I mean, do you think the recession, this potential recession, do you think the economy being, I mean, that's all cyclical. That happens all throughout history.
If the recession does like devastate us, I think it'll affect all markets. But long term, past say we had a recession and come out of it, I think it's going to be like you said, the Griffeys, the Jordans, the Kobe's, the LeBrons that are going to maintain like the big value. Like the stuff that is truly hard to find comes up once or twice a year or years, maybe once every 5 years. That stuff is the stuff you want to get and just hold on to. Because like I was telling you, I have Griffeys that I paid $1,200 for in 2018 that are worth 30-40 grand now.
And you think PSA 10, or Gen Mint versions of those cards are going to be what you want to target?
Yeah, I think PSA 10s is definitely, the writing was on the wall back in like 2017. That's when it really started to take a big turn because Beckett was, some new stuff was Beckett. Like that's what everybody wanted to grade. But I think a lot of people just didn't understand PSA. I know I didn't. And then once I did and kind of understood, how to submit and what their standard was, I think PSA could do a better job of explaining their standards because a lot of people.
Well, yeah, tell me what that is. Tell me what that is. What is the standard? What did you learn that you finally understood?
With the PSA 10, you need 4 sharp front corners, and on the back you can have like one touch on one of them, like very minor. When I say a touch, I would have to like maybe draw it, but no scratches at all. And then the edges on the back can have like a little chipping on like one edge, like a couple dots. Where BGS, and I wish I saved some of these examples, but like they almost don't even look at the back because I've seen like BGS 9.5s where the back was like white around the whole edge. But Beckett, you can have like multiple issues. Like you can have slight surface scratching, like It depends how it looks like kind of I think it matters what light source they use, because I've had some that like I'm like, oh, this might be 8. It's that bad, and I got a gem, and they gave it a 9 surface. So I don't know if it's like some of them are still using halogen lights and some are using LEDs, because that makes a difference. If you look at your cards under different light sources, you'll see it differently. And then, like I said, SGC is just if it looks good to your eye. So I did this last like October. I had a bunch of cards that I knew were probably like PSA 8s, but they look good to the eye. I got like 3 10s with SGC. So to me, it's if it looks good to your eye. Like there's it's up right now on eBay. It's the 95 Power Alley die cut Griffey, the SGC. I graded that. One of the corners has like a chip out of it, but it got an SGC 10. So like each company has a different standard of how they grade. Where Beckett, you can have a soft corner and still get a 9.5. You can still have a white corner and still get a 9.5. Like I had and what I was saying about the subgrades earlier, how the numbers don't make sense. I have the picture. I have a bunch of pictures, I could show, but I had a 98 Crusade, and I'm like, I reviewed it. I'm like, all right, we have to go to Beckett. I knew it would still gem with Beckett, but I knew it wouldn't with PSA because of the corner. Beckett gave it 10 corners, but you can literally, like with my loop, you can see the corners raised. It was like ding, basically, you could say. So like the numbers, people put too much faith in those numbers is what I'm saying.
Got it. You really got to, it's the education, it's learning. Obviously, I talk to a person like you and I start learning a lot. And I've reached out to a lot of great people. There's people with like, I have a few Kobe cards, Eric Haley Hustle. He's really knowledgeable on the Kobe market. I'm sure that Chris Hoge is really in Cajun cardboard. Those guys are great with Michael Jordan. They understand the market, the cards, what matters, what doesn't matter. You obviously with Griffey you're the guy, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. Everybody kind of points to you. And there's just people that you can go to and go, hey, I know this market, I know this player, I player collect them, player collected them for years, so that the cards. Then you learn over time, and everybody will tell you this, you kind of learn how to look at a 10 and a 9.5, and is every 10 a 10, is every 9.5, is it really a gem card? You learn to discern that, which is something that I don't think a lot of people do, but they're starting to do it.
I don't think people like my personal philosophy is if you say, they graded cards and they're bitching about the grade, and you ask them if they used a loop and they tell you no, their opinion's void, because you cannot see a lot of the stuff with your eye, no matter how good your eyesight is, unless I just have really bad eyes. But like for instance, 93 Tops is a good example, because you can't see or 89 Upper Deck with the Griffey. There's a reason that card is like a 0.5% gem rate, is because you can't see the edges. They chip or they'll crack. They have like cracks in them. 91 Tops is another one, and that's another thing with like the whole 90s. Like you could tell me a card, I'll tell you what's wrong with it without looking at it, because there's a lot of videos on YouTube. Like one guy was like, oh, I love when people say there's pop control. Like, no, you could open 3 cases of 1989 Upper Deck, and the best card you'll pull is a 7 for Griffey.
Wow.
And you say you pull 5th. There's actually a video, a guy did that on YouTube, but I know that from just opening this stuff. And like one time, there was a 86 Tops Eric Davis that sold for like $900, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's stupid. You just go open a ton of it." It doesn't work like that. Especially like 90 stuff is just like, it's just the way it's made. You could like I pulled the platinum Derek Jeter platinum medallion 98 Ultra. The back looked like somebody like a ballpoint pen that runs out of ink. That's what the back of the card looked like, fresh out of the pack. So wow. It's just a print. There's a reason everything's like pop under 5. It's not that PSA is pop controlling it. It's just that like Nolan Ryan's rookie, there was some conspiracy because there's only pop 1. If you look at every Nolan Ryan rookie ever, there's they're all off center, soft corners. Same thing with Ricky Henderson. I just don't think these people know exactly how to pinpoint, down to what it should be.
So, and you're asking people to really trust that there's no pop control going on, because that is something that people.
Yeah. I'm not, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at heart. So I guess I think I draw my conclusions, and I'm so strong in my stance just because I do grade, and I see what comes back, and I've never really disagreed with a grade PSA gave me, or if it's close. Yeah, there's been a couple I've cracked and resub, but usually it was because, I don't know if they use gloves now, but they do leave a lot of shit on the cards, fingerprints and debris in the case. So again, they're not perfect. I'm just saying for the volume they do a pretty good job, for 10x the next person, and their standard is very strong. I think they have the best standard. You have a lot of people that watch this, they'll be like in the comments, I'm sure we'll be talking a bunch of junk, but I can prove it. I can show it in action. If we went to a show and we picked up some BGS 9.5 cards, I could point you out right there what the issue is. And like BGS, I've seen, they seem to transpose a lot of numbers. So like, do I have a BGS case over here? Like the corners in the surface, for instance, they'll like switch them a lot. Like I bought this, a lot of people will buy cards with like a low surface grade, but everything else is 9.5, try to crack and resub. Like I did that with a Trout once, a Trout rookie 2011 Chrome. It had an 8 surface, 9.5 corners. And then when I got it, I looked at it through the loop. Every corner was rounded. So it was the opposite of.
They just got them mixed up.
Yeah.
Wow. So the subgrades can be nice, but subgrades can be also pretty dangerous because you don't know if they've got the numbers unless you're looking at that card. See, I mean, I don't. I trust the grade. I've been trusting the grade. I haven't thought about that as much. I mean, we always know a 10 can be, every 10's a bit different. I never really I didn't think there would be some major discrepancies.
I'll give you an example. Right now, people can go Google it. The BGS 9 that I just sold to PMG, and I don't want to talk shit, whoever bought it, but you can literally see the corner is like white. That would be a PSA 7. And then there was for instance, I have a Ruby's PSA 8. When I go to sell that, I'm crossing that to BGS because that full grade bump that I'm definitely going to get, because mine's clean. There was on Golden, a BGS 8 Rubies just sold. Go look at the back of it. Go search completed results. Look at that Ruby's back, and then I'll send you a picture of the back of my card. You know what I'm saying? So the number carries weight to a certain degree with Beckett, where the gem differentiates. The 9 still, like, to me, a PSA 9 should outsell a BGS 9 by a ton on certain cards. But for instance, I have a PMG that would, and even Nat, because Nat's crossed a bunch over because he likes it at all the BPSA. He's seen 3-4 point drops on the PMGs. Why is that? Because they're not really looking at the creases around the edge. They're just kind of eyeing it, and maybe they're saying, oh, for a PMG it's nice, but I had an 8.5 BGS that somebody crossed over to PSA, got a 4.
Wow.
So it's like, but at the end of the day, people were in the market of, they just want the number. So you got to learn to play the game with which cards are better off with Beckett over PSA when you go to resell them. I'll give you.
Go ahead. Yeah, keep giving me more examples though. They give me another one. What you got? I ruined your train of thought.
No, one more. A Red Crusade sold recently, and it kind of went a little lower than it should have. But the first time when it originally sold, it was a BGS 8. And then the guy crossed it over to PSA, but the print line was pretty nasty, and it got a 7. So it's like you devalued the card, in my opinion. You should have just left it to 8 or resubbed it. And now I get the train of thought because I'm OCD. Like, I've graded a lot of stuff where I just took the PSA 9 over maybe the BGS 9.5 because I just wanted all PSA stuff. I did that when I did all my autos. And I mean, the market, some PSAs are still pretty close to BGS 9.5s, if not right there. So It doesn't know. I just kind of just PSA everything now. That's my
Well,
train of
yeah.
thought.
Again, it's happened naturally for me. I haven't even really thought about it. I think my Trout, the first Bowman Auto, is just the only BGS card I have anymore. I've had quite a few, but I think I've just moved them all, and all the Griffies I'm buying, they're all the only. No, that's not. I'm wrong. I have the Bowman Tiffany '89 Bowman Tiffany and a 9.5 slab, the Griffey rookie, but that was because the discrepancy in price was insane. It was double the price. I feel like this is still a really good card, but I think, but that's what's exciting about it. I mean, learning all this stuff, and to me, I think this is all great food for thought. And as you grow and learn in the hobby, as you're collecting and you're putting together your PC, you want to pay attention to this stuff. It matters because those grades are everything. I think they're very material when it comes to you're selling it down the road. I think the grades are the only thing to differentiate the authenticity of it, and then the fact that it's going to command a certain price because of the grade and how many there are.
Well, I mean, a lot of people want to think about the future too, and let's put it like this: in say 10 years, you die. I don't have kids, but a lot of people have kids, right? And you know how many collections I've purchased where the widow died and I got it for pennies on the dollar? A lot. Like I've gotten stuff wholesale basically, and a lot of people have. But if you have it set up where, like right now, I have all my stuff at a vault and it's all graded. So all I'd have to do is either write a will and say, hey, I want PWCC, all whoever, whatever consigner, just to sell off all my stuff. It's already labeled. It's already ready to go. There's no question on value,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it's in your closet in a box, how does your wife's not, or your wife, uncle, aunt, whoever is not going to know the difference between a 91 Topps Ken Griffey Jr. that's 10 cents versus a 96 Marigold that's 100 grand, They're going to them, they just call up somebody, they're going to get offered $2,000 and sell the card, And I think that's why a lot of the 90s pops are low, because a lot of 90 guys hated grading. Like Griffey guys especially, all of them hated it. I was like one of the first to kind of come through and grade the stuff. So, there's two guys offhand I know that have like the deepest player collections of all player collections, like just endless amounts of stuff, but like all of it, and like none of their stuff is graded. So when they go to sell, I'll give you one more example. So this is where like posting in this day and age, like you said, I don't have enough content, and I agree. I'm just kind of lazy, and I don't even know how to really make quality content. And so I would always post my stuff on the message boards. And I have there's a Griffey OG collector, Rick, and he's collected since day one. He had 3 full rooms full of all Griffey stuff. Just everything. You could think of food, bats, balls, whatever. So he saw that I was getting all these 10s and stuff, and he reached out to me to help him because it was time to sell. He didn't want to leave it to his kids because his kids weren't interested, and he figured get the money now while he knows what it's worth and can sell it himself. So he invited me. We ended up working out a deal where I just went and helped him, and I ended up spending the first trip out 8 days there. I must have went through like 15,000 cards, and we ended up grading we'll call it 600. And then, the Beckett order, I hit like 80% gems because we only sent like the best of the best stuff. And then the PSA order was like 50%, and that's out of my normal routine. Like I was literally like a PSA worker, just going through the things. But then I showed him, and like he was the guy that just collected, hated grading. But then he kind of saw like, all right, do I want to sell my card for $10 or $2,000? And he's like, all right, the writing's on the wall there. And then, we got all the stuff back. He sold it all, and he then after I left, because as I was going, I would show him every card. I'd be like, see that, see the ink. You could, he just didn't realize. He's like, oh, I just buying to buy. He was, he showed me like some of the labels he cracked from old holders that were like already gems and 9s and stuff. And And then after me showing him all the details, he started grading his own. Now he's hitting like 90% on what he sends in. So it's just like, I think it's just education for people to learn grading better and know how to grade better.
Well, obviously, we're talking about grading a lot in this episode, which I think is good. And I think you're teaching and educating, and that's a big part of what this podcast series is about. What Luca Nation's about. I know Andrew Cage loved to educate. It's a big part of what we all do. But I can imagine there's folks like yourself and other, you want to help, but you also don't want to help in a way, because if you give too much away, then it just creates more competition for you to do the things you're doing. And quite frankly, this is your living. This is how you provide for yourself. So you got to respect that. But that's, people like myself and others that are learning from you are like, well, gosh, I'm glad you're teaching us, because, we're able to benefit from that knowledge. Do you find that there's a lot of collectors that are just like, I just don't really want to talk about it. I want to keep that stuff to myself. Maybe that's why you don't have a lot of content.
99% of people don't want to talk about it, but I try to be selective with my info. Like, give out the stuff that's helpful, but at the same time, I'm not going to tell you where I just got that lot today, or there's certain things you can't give out because people are just snakes in general, So, but I think you can give enough to help people. I believe in, I'm not religious, but I believe in karma. What you give out, you get back. So I help everybody, and there's enough in the world for me there's enough Griffies out there that I'm not running out of buying opportunities. I'm more running out of money than opportunities to buy cards, so
I think a lot of us run into that conundrum. It's like, we want some of these cards, but we're going to have to part with something we love to get it. And that's why some of these cards are hitting the block. And I don't think that's the majority of the reason why. I think a lot of people are just trying to get cash. I think a lot of people are probably getting out of it. Maybe some people got hurt. They spent way too much. Now they're trying to get out. People like me are like, I'm just trying to get these cool cards. So like, I'll sell these now, right? But yeah.
Well, the problem is the people in that realm of COVID, they didn't have the knowledge. They were just buying blindly, thinking everything's going to rise forever. Where I'm saying you better sell all those Griffey rookies at $3 to $6 grand a pop now, because there's no way it's going to hold that value. And of course, they all fall back down to reality. But I mean, just to touch on one other thing you had said, like, that's why the name of my podcast, which barely exists, is called Opinions Aren't Facts. And like, I try to only speak on things I actually know about. Like, I hate when people speak on something they don't know about as fact, a little, or preface it that is their opinion. And yeah, I don't know.
Because
I was going somewhere with that, but
it's because you know what you're talking about. You feel like it's fun. It's good to share the information, to teach people how to be careful, because you want to see people be providential. You don't want to see people drop money, and because I make decisions. If I'm spending money, I want to make sure it's wise money. I don't want to just blindly go follow and just try to give someone some money in their pocket for the sake of it. But I don't mind, people are probably getting some meat on the bone. A lot of stuff I sell on eBay, Lord knows it, but maybe they'll be able to go off and do something with it. And that's great. But I'm still ending up with what I want. And so I'm always happy in the end. But I think it is important to share that information. But I do think there's that balance you have to have, because, we're all, I think it's easier to be a bit more informative and more helpful when you're in a more of a liquid market. The cards are more liquid, because there's enough for everybody, or most of the people that are interested. In this specific subset, which I'm now unearthed in completely, and I'll never come out of, I've slowly gotten there, and I'm just like all the way in, all the way down the rabbit hole. You got to be careful, because there's only so many of these cards, right? So I lost you there. There you are. There's only so many of those cards, so you kind of have to be careful and selective in how you assist others. I mean, if you're a duplicate holder, I think it's, I don't have as much sympathy for you, but if it's the only card you got, which I like how you had a strategy of finding one. I think if it's someone that knows their stuff, like you understand how to grade, it's easier to take your counsel and like, okay, I'm giving you this raw card. I think it would be a 9 or a 10. Okay, I can replace that card now.
I can tell you grading works against me more than it, as far as like dealing with people, because if I want somebody's raw card, they automatically assume Like, why do I want it?
If you're buying it from you, you know it's good, Joe.
Yeah, they automatically assume something, and then
Nice.
same thing when I do sell. Now, like I'm over the top with like explaining condition because I'm a person that I hate. I don't want to have returns, so I actually grade like 90% of stuff that I sell because I just don't want to deal with the issue.
Yeah.
I'd rather sell something as a 6, take a $200 loss on it, than having to sell it raw and maybe get returned twice because somebody didn't like the condition or, oh, this has this. And actually, here's another thing to blend both together. If you have something you think is borderline on a grade it, because a lot of the times you'll be pleasantly surprised that you'll probably get that bump. Because there's a ton of stuff I send in that gems, and I'm like, I had no idea that would gem. Or even like I had a 98 Atomic, the one that you just bought. It was raw, and I had an issue on the back of it, and I was like explaining it to this guy. He's beating me up. I'm like, you know what? F this. I'm just gonna grade it, and I got a 9. I ended up making another grand on it. So sometimes there's issues, and I think PSA does have the standards on the site, but they could update them to kind of better reflect,
Right.
not vintage cards. But there's some issues that it can have that people I don't think understand would still make it mint, because people return mint cards on eBay, but they don't think they're mint because it has an issue when it's still technically mint.
Right. Well, I've kept you for a long time. I'm glad I was able to grab you because I know you don't jump on podcasts and do the podcast tour. That's not you. And I just feel like we're lucky to have you and have this episode air. I think this is one that folks are going to want to go back and check out again and again, listen to it again and again because there's so many nuggets that you could pull from this, learning about how to collect, how to view the market, why certain cards aren't selling for what they could, when to sell, all that kind of stuff. You're going to learn there's strategy that goes into this, and there's just people that have been doing it for a while understand the market. They understand how deep the collector bases are for a lot of these these player collections and player collectors, and even more so, you can't trust pop counts. It's hard to trust how many cards are really out there because so many people don't grade in a certain space. I mean, in modern space they do, but in 90s space they just don't grade. So it's really hard to kind of trust those pops. But thanks so much, Joey, for being on. I know we could talk for 3 hours. This could be a 3-part series so easily. And I know it's so late there for you, but I really appreciate you coming on. And again, folks, if you go check out Joey, you can follow him on Instagram. You can watch his 3 or 4 videos he has, which are all amazing. Just go check them out. They're really great. I know I keep poking fun of him, but I think I know why he only has 3 or 4. But it's not because you're lazy. It's because there's a reason behind that. But I think, and Rodney's a good guy. Maybe we'll do another episode, get Rodney on the show too, because I think that guy's got a lot of knowledge too. He's really, really neat guy. And you guys work well together. Maybe we'll just do a follow-up episode at some point where we can get both of your opinions on certain things and stuff like that. We come up with something fun. But anyway, thank you, Joey, for being a part of this series. Really cool stuff.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. So friends, if you want to comment below of this video when you watch it, if you disagree with Joey, let him know. He will read those comments and he will respond back. He will give you good feedback, and he'll definitely stand his ground. So anyway,
that's my downfall. I can't stay away from the comment. So
no, he's a comment guy, and that's good. We like that. That's what we want. We want engagement. So anyway, friends, thanks for joining us today. We got Joey P. Fobb, we got Ken Griffey Jr., we got 90s inserts. We talked about it all, grading, comps, the whole 9. Go back and listen to it again and again and again. Thank you. It's part of the Luca Nation Network. It's a collector series. I'm DPZ.
With nearly 40 years as the most trusted resource for collectors, dating back to the first Beckett magazine in 1984, Beckett has been the brand that bridges generations of the hobby. We're happy to be partnering with Beckett and look forward to keeping you all updated on the big things happening at the company in 2023. Beckett. It's the name you know and the name you can trust.